And I don't even supposed to be taking this off. I don't even supposed to take it off. But I want the whole world to see. Everybody that supported me is to never break me. That's why I took this off to show to everybody around the world. This ain't breaking me.
Nothing.
This ain't holding me down.
Real.
That's why I showed you. That's why I took it off.
Facts.
Because I'm a real. The only thing that can break me is myself. God. And God didn't break me. He put me back on earth to break you. I ask all the time, when you going back to no jumpers? Nigga, I ain't going back. I ain't no going back. Why would I go back to that's on the internet talking about me? You get up there with my enemies, talk about my head, talk about me, laugh like it's funny. I would have broke your jaw. I looked at you as a friend. I'm about to get a Vernon Avenue. And that nigga think it's smiles and faces. My homies, my family, my loved ones sad. They crying. They thinking I'm dying. I'm collapsing. I'm getting blood transfusions. Surgery for 5 hours and 30 minutes. And you think it's funny to say, to get up there and think it's smell? I would have broke his face. Hell no, I'd never go back there. Because you was just a buster like the rest of these with a sheep over your head, pretending. That's how I feel.
Trap LA News.
Shalom. As always, all praises, honor, and glory goes to Yahweh Hashem. Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakaha, Kodash, all honor to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone. Peace and salutations to the elect scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. Lord willing, this one will be quick and edifying to the elect. And that's a problem with Jake. It's never until things get too late, that they realize that, Esau, Edom, is the devil the Bible speaks of. They're not your friends, because, if you listen carefully, he said he considered Adam 22 as his friend. And now he's disappointed that he made fun of, the video of him, the fireworks exploding and destroying his hand. Right? And he's saying that he's doing that, with his enemies and this and that. But, Adam was always your enemy. Adam 22 was always your enemy. But because of the benefits and the nature of Esau, they pretend, they like to believe themselves that they actually are your friends, but within, their heart, they have cruel intentions. They're plotting against you. They're not hoping for your, how do I say it? They're not looking out for you. Or they're not doing anything for your benefit. Just keep it simple. So this is Ecclesiasticus chapter, I think this is 10? No, 12, chapter 12, verse, let me start at verse 8. And it says, a friend cannot be known in prosperity. Right, because when, this is the nature of humans, when everything is going well, everybody's happy, everybody gets along. That's similar to the example they use with women. You never really know if a woman is down for you in a certain way unless, shit hits the fan or there's a difficult situation that, really can test the character of that woman. But the same thing applies for humans in general. When everything is nice and beneficial and happy, everyone that calls themselves your friends or appear to be your friends, they'll be around, right? How much so Esau, right? Because you're dealing with the serpent. So it goes on to say, an enemy cannot be hid in adversity, right? So when there's adversity, the enemy cannot be hid, right? It'll be clear who the real enemy is, right? And in a situation like this, Adam 22, was, revealed himself not to be your actual friend because you were caught in an illusion because of how you were being treated by this individual, because you don't know the scriptures. You don't have the Spirit working with you to know that we're separate, and you should never, ever trust your enemy, right? These other guys that you had gang related, or whatever history you have with these other Israelite men, so-called Negroes, you're calling them your enemies. Well, indeed, they're your neighbors. He is your enemy, right? He's a small hat, right? That's what he is. They use you, right? They use you for content and exploit you for whatever reason. It's never really a true friendship, right? It's just business. Now, if you had that mindset to look at the relationship as just business, then that would be different. You wouldn't be surprised. Okay, and it says in the prosperity of a man, enemies will be grieved, right? Because when you're doing well, your enemies are happy for you. Even if they hide it. If you just look closely, you'll see that it makes them uneasy. And these Edomites. They don't want to see anyone above them. That's their nature, right? Because they're so used to being on top. So this goes first and foremost for Esau, Edom, but even Jake today. They have that bad mind spirit in them. When you're doing well, you're doing better than them, or it appears that way, it makes them uneasy. It doesn't make them happy for you because it makes them feel less. I've heard an old friend of mine say that. He told me this is how they think. This is not a surprise, but this spirit is the spirit, naturally the spirit of Esau, Edom. They just act in a different way to do it, so in a way where they'll just keep you below them. They'll restrain you, right, and help you to the benefit of themselves. All right, and it says, never trust an enemy, for as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. So, plain and simple, never trust these crackers, never trust these so-called white people, these Caucasians, because every second, every hour, every day, their wickedness gets worse and worse. Thus saith Yahweh Shemel Shai, Kodash. It gets worse and worse, and they are the masters of wickedness. So it's hidden craftily. It's very, very clearly. It's hard for some individuals to identify their wickedness because it looks so plain and innocent. When, if you know their nature, you know that that's not the case. That's just part of their nature. They have a serpent-like nature. They're very slithery. They're very calculated, right? They're just chilling with you, waiting for the right moment. Sometimes they hide their horns, and sometimes their horns are revealed. So verse 11 goes into it more. It says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him. And thou shalt be unto him as thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not altogether wiped away. Right? So you here thinking that this Edomite is your friend, but then when you're in an adverse situation, when you're facing calamity, when you're facing a situation such as your hand being blown up because of fireworks, which that's judgment from Yahweh Shemel Shai. Right, you then say, oh, I looked to use my friend. He was never your friend. You should just be looking to use them as they use you, not cherishing the relationship as a actual friendship, a genuine friendship. That's where you went wrong, because you don't understand the nature of these devils. You look at these devils just like you look at everybody on the planet Earth today, and now you can't do that. Because the scriptures instruct us to be separate. We're holy people. We're above them. So you can be users of this world. You can use these devils, to your benefit. But here's the thing. You got to be careful, man. You got to know their nature, and you got to know what you're getting yourself into, whatever it may be. I don't advise any brother to be, putting themselves in situations such as this Jake here. What's his name? 4Extra. Compromising yourself on that level in the industry, but I'm just saying in general, with certain opportunities. You got to be aware of who you're dealing with, the type of devil you're dealing with, the nature of this guy. You have to remember, Esau hates Jacob for the blessings that Yahweh Shem Yahushai had given us. You know, blessings that we received through Yahushai when he was Isaac, through Yahweh Shem Yahushai, through Yahweh, through Isaac, which is Yahushai, until this day. He envies us. It's a spiritual thing. So even though they're living their blessing now and they're on top, subconsciously in their spirit deep down, because we don't have remembrance of former things, but or in our memory, but our spirit knows. In some, when we're in the kingdom, we're gonna understand certain things more, but where spirits coming back over and over again. So these small hats, these different Edomites today, they may not remember everything and know things like the prophets of Yahweh Shemel Shai, but it's in their spirit to hate Jacob because of the blessing. They don't fully know. The elites know, and they're lesser nation men. No, but it's just a thing in their spirit. It's as simple as that. And it goes on to say, let me just read this line again. It says, "Thou shalt be unto him as thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust hath not altogether wiped away." And it says, "Set him not by thee, lest when he hath overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. Neither let him sit at the right hand, let he seek to take thy seat. And thou at the last remember my words, and be pricked therewith." Right. Verse 13, "Who pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent, or such as come nigh wild beasts?" Right. So we don't feel sorry for you, man, for sitting up there sharing this podcast, giving this Edomite your strength and considering him your friend. And then when he turns his back on you or makes fun of your situation, or has, Israelite men that are your so-called enemies make fun of you, you're crying about it and saying you're not going back. Well, if the spirit was dealing with you, or if you're sincere, which is not the case with these men, because these men are of the world, they're 2/3 spirit, but we are not the ones that decide who will be awakened and brought back to the truth of who they are. We're not the ones that decide who the Lord is going to have the spirit flow into to understand and learn from these things. But nonetheless, as they're currently, how do I say this? As they're currently displaying themselves and behaving, we know that they're not, they're not of the elect. I say that humbly because I don't know if I'm of the elect. I hope so. I hope I can endure and, continue in this ministry and pushing the Lord's work. But this is just something to be mindful of. Not, trusting in the Esau, swearing for Esau in any way, because he's the devil. He's going to expose himself when adversity comes. And this chapter goes into other things as well. I can just summarize it. He can also either show his horns in when certain things happen to you, when you expect him to be helping you and not making fun of you or making a fool of you or a mockery of you. He'll be helping you and saying positive things. They're not going to do that. However, there's times when they have an agenda where they when it does benefit them to help you, right? When it does benefit them to help you, they're going to come and pretend that they're helping you for your benefit and that they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But there's always an agenda. And let me just jump to it right here. And it says, verse 16, it says, "An enemy speaketh sweetly with his lips, but in his heart he imagineth how to throw thee into a pit. He will weep with his eyes, but if he find opportunity, he will not be satisfied with blood. If adversity come upon thee, thou shalt find him there first. And though he pretend to help thee, yet he undermine thee. And he will shake his hand and clap his hands and whisper much and change his countenance." This is the nature of the devil you're dealing with. So, those of you Israelites that live, overseas, in the the larger parts of the world where these Edomites are dwelling, Europe, Canada, the Americas, Babylon the Great, United States, these different European countries, whatever it may be. You got to be careful, man. You got to be extra careful if you have people that you consider Edomite friends in these days, because we're coming into very dangerous times. As men of the Lord, as hopeful elect members, as believers, as listeners, whether if you're a woman, a young child, or there's a man that's not a prophet, but you're a sincere believer of the hopeful elect, you got to be very circumspect, as the scriptures say. We have to be circumspect, we have to be vigilant, we have to be aware of what we're dealing with at all times. No matter what other people want to believe, you need to be aware of what's going on and what you're dealing with. And don't find yourself in situations such as this. That's why you try every spirit. So if you're keeping things business, you keep it business. But we're not sorry for this guy, as it says here, who shall pity a charmer that is bitten with a serpent. And there's all these celebrities nowadays, when Esau turns their back on them, like, we're not sorry for you. You know what you signed up for. It's all a game at the end of the day. It's all demonic and all ritualistic. But you smaller, you lower level wannabes, that go on these podcasts and then do these interviews with these different, Edomite industry keepers, or however you want to say it. Vlad, Cam Capone, you got Adam 22. All of that is a distraction. You're just helping them. You're just adding to the distractions of the world. The things that are not important, the entertainment aspects of things, that all it does is just dumber people down, have them focusing on bullshit that's not going to prosper. That's not going to be prosperous for them, right? So I'll just leave it there. This was not meant to be long at all. Never trust your enemy, right? Because as iron rusted, so does its wickedness. So no matter how cool you may be with these heathen, these Edomites, that's because that's their true biblical identity. They're not white. They're Hebrew Edomites. Their blood shows through their skin. They have a pink-like skin tone, which pink is a derivative of red, right? It's a shade of red. So that's their complexion. They're not white people. White means holy, pure, clean, and they're far from that, right? They're Edomites. They're Idumeans. That's what they are. And you're not to trust these people. Do we have Israelites that look like them? Yes. You have Israelites that appear to be Edomites, but they're not. That's why you try the spirit, because it's not about skin complexion, but through their spirit, they'll show who they are. That's the whole point. Edomites show who they are through their spirits and their actions, right? Because you have Edomites that look like so-called black men as well. But with that, all praises, honor, and glory goes to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rukaha, Kodash, Abad, Babal, death to Babylon.